Winterfell was colder than usual, even for early winter. Snow piled like silence across the courtyards, and everything, stone, steel, even people, felt heavier. Robb Stark stood by the godswood, his breath a soft cloud in the freezing air, watching the red leaves of the weirwood flutter in the stillness. Behind him, footsteps crunched. Theon Greyjoy, no longer just his ward, not just a friend, not even a brother. Something more, something neither of them spoke of outside whispers in the dark. But today wasn't about whispers. Today was war. "You summoned me?" Theon's voice was as cocky as ever, but his eyes betrayed something softer. Robb turned, eyes sharp, jaw set. "I'm going to do it." Theon raised a brow. "Do what?" "End this Game of Thrones the way no one expects," Robbie said. "The North needs strength, unity, loyalty. I need it, and I trust no man more than you." Theon laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You've got enough bannermen. You've got the Riverlands, the Karstarks, even the Freys. Gods help us." Robb stepped closer. "None of them matter. They follow me because I am Lord Stark, but you followed me before that. You were beside me when we were boys, learning to fight. You stood with me when we lost father. You bled for me on the battlefield." Theon looked down, snow melting on his cloak. "And I've shamed you. I'm a Greyjoy. They'll never forget that." "I don't care what they remember," Robb said, voice low now. "I care what I build, and I won't build it with liars, or traitors, or men who love me out of duty." There it was. Theon swallowed, staring at him. "You want to build it with me?" he asked, not hiding the hope or the fear. Robb nodded. "Not just as my brother-in-arms, not as a knight of my court, as my husband." Silence fell, heavier than snow. The world around them didn't move. No bird call, no wind. Even the weirwood seemed to freeze, its red leaves hanging like blood droplets in mid-air. Theon was trembling. "You can't mean that," he whispered. "You'd start a war." "I'm already in one." "You'd be called mad." "I've been called worse. The North won't accept it. They will if I win." Theon laughed again, bitter this time. "And what happens if you don't win? If they turn on you? They already think me a traitor. You marry me, they'll—" "Think you're one too." Robb stepped forward, close enough to touch. "Then let them. I'd rather die for something real than live pretending I don't love you." Theon's lips parted, but no words came. His hands were shaking now. Maybe from cold. Maybe not. He looked into Robb's eyes like he was trying to find the lie, but there was none. And so Theon kissed him. Not like a boy sneaking around or a man fearing judgment. It was deep, defiant, angry even, like they both knew what this meant and what it would cost. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Robb only said, "We'll announce it at the next council." Theon blinked. "You're mad." "Maybe," Robb smirked, "but I'm done hiding." The great hall of Winterfell had never been this tense. Not even during wartime councils or funerals. The hearth-fire burned high, casting long shadows over the faces of every northern house that still backed Robb Stark. The Karstarks, the Mormonts, the Glovers, the Umbers. Steel scraped wood as restless men shifted in their seats. A few whispered, a few glared. Everyone waited. Robb stood tall at the high table, shoulders squared, eyes steady. He wore his father's cloak, heavy and grey, trimmed in white fur, and his sword at his side. But it wasn't just the weight of the North he carried now. Beside him stood Theon Greyjoy. Robb didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When a Stark spoke, people listened, even if they hated what they heard. "I've called you here, not just as your king, but as your son, your kin, your blood," Robb began. "And I'll speak plain, because the North has no love for riddles." The lords watched him, waiting for another declaration of war, another march, another death sentence. But what came instead was worse to many of them. "I intend to take Theon Greyjoy as my husband." Gasps, outrage, a chair scraped hard. One of the Frey cousins, sour-faced and red-eared, stood as if struck. Lady Mage Mormont was the first to speak, her voice gravelly and sharp. "Is this a jest, Robb Stark?" "No," Robb said. "It's my choice." "He's a Greyjoy," Lord Rickard Karstark spat, "a turncloak's son, the same family that raided our shores and burned our ships. And yet he has bled for me, fought beside me, and stood where others would have fled," Robb said. "Name me another man in this hall who has done as much and asked for less." "He's a man," Lord Glover said slowly, "and you mean to marry him. Are we to rewrite the laws of gods and men now?" "The gods know our hearts," Robb replied, "and I'll not pretend I don't love him to please your pride." Murmurs spread like wildfire. The Freys looked disgusted. Even some northern bannermen exchanged nervous glances. But Lady Mormont, oddly, sat down with a thoughtful grunt and said nothing else. Then came the voice no one expected. Old Lord Greatjon Umber stood up, big, loud, always drunk, but loyal once to Robb above all. His face was unreadable. "My king," he said, voice quieter than usual. "What you do in your bed is your business. What you do with your crown is ours." Robb nodded. "And I ask you to follow me still, not for who I marry, but for the war we must win." Greatjon stared at Theon for a long moment, then barked a laugh. "Well, at least he's prettier than most Freys." The tension broke for a second. A few chuckles. Then a dozen lords began shouting at once. "He's an Ironborn. This is madness. The South will never accept this. House Stark will fall into ruin." Robb raised his hand. The noise quieted, but the anger lingered, hot and bitter. "If you can't follow a king who makes his own choices," Robb said, eyes cold now, "then you are free to leave. But know this, betray me, and I'll treat you no different than I would a Lannister." That silenced them. Afterward, the hall emptied in a strange, fractured silence. Some left with stiff nods, others with clenched fists. A few didn't look back at all. Robb and Theon stood alone. "They hate me," Theon said, his voice flat. "They fear what we are," Robb replied, "but let them. You'll lose them. I'd rather lose them than lose myself." Theon leaned against one of the stone columns, exhaustion creeping in. "We've started something we can't stop." Robb stepped close. "Then we finish it." And in the shadows of the hall, as snow fell softly outside Winterfell's stone walls, two men stood alone, bound not just by love, but by defiance. But far to the south, word had already begun to spread, and Catelyn Stark, mother, widow, and lion-hearted matriarch, had just received a raven, bearing the news that would shatter her. The ravens beat her to it. By the time Lady Catelyn Stark stepped through the gates of Winterfell, the halls had already grown quieter, colder, not just from the weather, but from the weight of scandal. Servants averted their eyes. Guards stiffened awkwardly when she passed. Even Maester Luwin, always so calm, fumbled his words when he greeted her at the gate. Her boots echoed through the hall as she marched forward. She hadn't removed her cloak, hadn't sat to rest, hadn't even spoken a word since arriving. Only one name moved on her lips. "Where is Robb?" The door to the council chamber creaked open. She entered without being announced. Robb was there, seated at the head of the long oak table. He stood when he saw her, young and tall, with Eddard Stark's eyes, but something colder in his posture, more rigid, less boy, more king, and beside him stood Theon Greyjoy. "Mother," Robb said cautiously. Catelyn stopped mid-step. Her face was unreadable, lips tight, but her eyes burned. She looked at Theon with a kind of restrained fury that only a mother can carry. "You summoned me from River Run," she said, voice steady. "You said it was urgent." Robb nodded. "I thought you'd been taken. I feared a Lannister ambush, a betrayal." "There was no ambush." "And yet you brought me here to tell me this," she said, cutting her words like knives. "You're marrying him?" Theon stiffened, but Robb stepped forward. "Yes." The room was quiet. "You would dishonor your house," she said. "Spit on your father's legacy. Marry a man, and not just any man. Him, Theon Greyjoy, the son of Balon Greyjoy, the same man who burned our ships and betrayed his oaths to Robert. You've forgotten what they are, what they did to your father." "I haven't forgotten anything," Robb said louder now. "I remember every death, every betrayal, but I also remember who stood beside me when father died. I remember who rode with me into battle when others ran. Theon was there, and he chose us, not them." Catelyn shook her head, anger rising. "He had no choice, Robb. He was our hostage. His loyalty was never tested, because he never had power. And now you would give him that power through you. You would make him king by marriage." "I would make him my equal," Robb said, "because he's earned it." Catelyn turned to Theon, eyes sharp and full of old wounds. "Tell me, Theon, did you whisper lies into his ear? Did you offer him what the phrase would not? Or was it always part of some long game from Pike?" Theon opened his mouth, but Robb stepped in. "He didn't seduce me. I loved him long before I knew what to do with it." Catelyn's voice cracked. "You are your father's son. You're meant to lead, to carry the name Stark with pride. With pride. Not like this." Robb's voice softened. "And if father were here, I believe he would want me to rule with honor, not hide, not lie. I'm not ashamed." For the first time, Catelyn's strength seemed to waver. She looked tired. Now, like the weight of war and loss, had finally sunk into her bones. Her eyes flicked to Theon once more, and this time there was something else in them. Not forgiveness, but understanding, perhaps, or at least recognition of something she couldn't change. "I crossed the Riverlands, fearing your death," she whispered. "Instead, I find you've chosen something worse." "I've chosen truth," Robb said. Catelyn looked away. "Then may the gods help us all." She turned and walked out. No shouting, no threats, just a silence that was somehow more terrifying than rage. That night, Winterfell was still. No feasts, no music, just snow falling, thick against the stone walls. Theon sat alone in his chamber, staring at the fire. A knock. It was Robb. "She'll never forgive me," Robb said as he entered, voice low. "She might forgive you," Theon replied. "She'll never forgive me." Robb walked to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then let them all hate us," Robb whispered. "We'll rule anyway." But neither of them knew what was stirring. Beyond the north, whispers in the Vale, Lannister plots, and deep beneath Winterfell, in the crypts where the old king slept, something older had begun to awaken. A week passed, and the north had not yet torn itself apart, but it was close. Winterfell remained outwardly strong. Torches lit, gates guarded, patrols doubled, but inside its ancient walls the foundation was shifting. Lords who once rode proudly under the dire wolf banner now held secret meetings at midnight. Servants whispered in corners. Even the ravens flew less frequently, as if the skies themselves were uncertain. Robb knew it. He saw it in the sideways glances at council meetings, in the long silences when he spoke. The lords still called him Your Grace, but with less conviction, less warmth. It was all turning cold, and Theon had become a symbol, not just of Robb's defiance, but of everything the North didn't understand. An Ironborn, a lover, a man wearing silks in a castle built on steel and snow. Some mocked him, others feared him, but none dared touch him. Not yet. One evening, Robb stood in the crypts beneath Winterfell. Alone, he walked slowly, passing each stone statue, Stark after Stark, Lord after Lord, all carved with their direwolves at their feet. His breath came out in clouds, even underground. Winter was seeping into everything. He stopped before his father's statue. Eddard Stark, stone-faced, sword in lap, forever watching. "I'm trying to honor you," Robb whispered, "even if it doesn't look that way." The shadows didn't answer, but something shifted in the air, cold, almost sharp. like a breeze had moved where there should be none. He turned. Nothing. But the silence had weight to it, the kind that pressed. On your skin. Back in the great hall, Lady Catelyn sat with Maester Luwin, a pile of raven scrolls between them. Her fingers trembled as she held one, sealed in gold wax with the sigil of House Lannister. King Joffrey has offered a truce, she said aloud, disbelief in her voice. Of a sort, Luwin said. It is more of a warning. If Robb continues with his intentions to marry Theon Greyjoy, the Crown will consider it an act of defiance against the faith and the throne. She scoffed. They already consider him a rebel. Yes, but now they'll call him a heretic as well. Catelyn looked at the parchment again. They're trying to turn the faith against him. They may succeed. Rumors travel faster than armies. At that moment, Lord Rickard Karstark entered uninvited, face flushed from wine or fury. It was hard to tell. "My lady," he said, "we must speak. Your son's choices are fracturing the north. Some houses are already pulling their men back to their own lands. They won't fight for this cause." "You mean they won't fight for love," she said, voice cold. "I mean they won't fight for a king who beds a traitor." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the hall. Theon walked in, quiet but unafraid. "I'm tired of being spoken around," he said. "If you have something to say, Karstark, say it to me." Rickard narrowed his eyes. "Very well, I think you're poison in this house, and if Robb truly loves the North, he'll send you back to Pike in chains." Catelyn stood. "That's enough." But Theon didn't back down. He stepped forward, standing face to face with the older man. "I was raised in this castle. I slept beside your sons. I trained with them, fought with them, and you dare speak of me as if I were not part of this land?" "You're not," Rickard said. "You never were. And the longer you stay, the more of us will die." Then he left. Catelyn didn't speak, just looked at Theon, something torn behind her eyes. And later that night in Robb's chambers, Theon sat by the fire, staring into the flames. "They're going to turn on you," he said, one by one. Robb poured wine, handed him a cup. "Then we hold tight to those who remain. And when there are none left, then we make new allies." Theon looked at him, puzzled. "Who?" Robb's eyes gleamed. "The South hates me, the North doubts me, but the Vale. You're not thinking of—" "Sansa is there. Littlefinger has influence. And the Knights of the Vale fight for honor. We give them a cause, a reason to believe we're not madmen, but builders of a new kingdom. A kingdom where the king marries a man. A kingdom where love isn't treason, but just..." As the words left his mouth, the fire dimmed slightly. The flames flickered blue for a split second, just long enough to make them both fall silent. Neither noticed the faint creaking sound from the crypts below. The ravens flew to the Vale. Robb's letter was bold, even for him. He spoke of alliance, of blood, of northern strength, and the chance to build a kingdom free of Lannister tyranny. But beneath the noble language was the real message. I need Sansa, I need the Vale, and I don't care who she has to marry to get it. It reached Peter Baelish 2 days later. He read it alone in his solar, sipping sweet wine and watching the snow fall on the Ares' pale towers. He read it again and again. His smile widened each time. Robb Stark, once a boy with a sword and a sense of justice, now a man with a lover and a kingdom of crumbling lords, and yet still a Stark, still powerful, still dangerous, still useful. He set the letter down and turned toward the fire. "Sweet Sansa," he murmured, "your brother is braver than I thought, or stupider." Outside, the Vale was quiet. The knights remained loyal, the lords bickering as always, but one thing was true: the Eyrie was protected by mountains and steel, and Littlefinger ruled it like a spider weaving endless webs. If Robb wanted an alliance, it wouldn't come cheap. 2 days later, a raven returned to Winterfell. Robb read the reply with a clenched jaw, then passed it silently to Theon. Theon's eyes scanned the parchment, his brow furrowing. "He'll grant the alliance deed, but only if I marry Sansa." Robb said nothing. "Gods," Theon muttered. "That's not just offensive, that's twisted." "He knows it," Robb said. "He wants to humiliate me, force me to choose between you and the alliance." "And you asked for this?" "I asked for help. I didn't think he'd ask for your head on a platter." Theon stood, pacing. "I'm not marrying your sister. I won't be a symbol to appease the Vale. I won't play dress-up to make them forget who I am." "I wouldn't let you," Robb said, stepping closer. "I sent another letter this morning, one he won't expect." "What did it say?" "It said that Sansa should be queen." Theon blinked. "What? If the Vale needs a throne to follow, let her have one. Let her rule beside us, not as a pawn but as a Stark. You and I can't give them the image they want, but Sansa, she can be their mask, their beauty, their claim to virtue. And she'll go along with that." Robb hesitated. "She will, if she believes we're building something worth protecting." But even as the political game unfolded, something else stirred in Winterfell, older than crowns, older than houses. The crypts had grown colder. Maester Luwin sent 2 boys to fetch herbs from the lower chambers. Only one came back. The other was found hours later, frozen stiff, eyes wide open, hand reaching for his dagger. No blood, no wounds, just fear locked on his face like stone. Whispers began. "Cursed," the old women muttered. "Magic," the younger ones feared. "Justice," said a few in darker corners. That night, Theon walked the halls alone, unable to sleep. The moonlight cast long shadows through the windows, and every creak of the old wood made him pause. When he passed the godswood, he stopped. The heart tree, white as bone, red eyes carved deep, seemed different, watching. He stepped closer. The air around it felt colder than the rest of the keep. He knelt, unsure why. Maybe to pray, maybe to listen, and for a brief, impossible moment, he thought he heard a voice. Not loud, not clear, but soft, ancient. "He who walks in another's skin cannot hide from the bones below." Theon shot to his feet, heart pounding. There was no one, just wind, just the whispering leaves. He turned and walked fast, refusing to run. But deep, beneath the stone, in the crypts no longer silent, the old kings did not rest. Their bones remembered betrayal, and Winterfell, for all its strength, was no longer certain who ruled it. The snow was falling in thick, heavy flakes when Sansa Stark returned to Winterfell. She rode beneath the old gates with the cold dignity of a queen, her red hair crowned. In silver, her cloak stitched with the direwolf and the falcon, Stark and Arryn united in fabric if not yet in blood. Her face held no warmth, no tears, just silence. Behind her the Vale Knights entered with gleaming armor and polished spears. Peter Baelish followed on horseback, smiling as if he'd just won a game no one else was playing. Robb stood in the courtyard, waiting, dressed in dark furs, the snow already gathering in his curls. Theon stood beside him, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. When Sansa dismounted, she didn't rush to embrace them. She simply looked at Robb, then Theon, then back again. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "So, it's true." Robb took a step forward. "You're welcome in your home." She glanced around. "It doesn't feel like home." Baelish approached slowly, all fake charm and soft words. "My Lord King, what a sight! A reunited house, a new era for the North." Theon's jaw tightened. "You're still breathing. That's surprising." Littlefinger smirked. "The gods must favor useful men." Robb ignored him. "We've built something, Sansa. Something fragile, yes, but something real. And I've come to see it for myself," she said. Not because I believe it yet, but because I wanted to know if you were mad or brave." She turned to Theon. "And you, I thought I hated you once. Now, I don't know what to feel." "I don't blame you," he said softly. That night a feast was held, smaller than most, with the lords thinned by politics and snow, but the Vale Knights brought music, and Sansa brought whispers. She moved like a ghost of old Winterfell, reminding every northern bannerman of the girl they once promised to protect. Some hearts softened, others hardened. Littlefinger whispered into ears between wine cups, seeding doubts with ease. "She would make a fine queen, don't you think? Wouldn't it be easier to crown her and let her choose a proper husband? Imagine the Vale and the North united, without all this scandal." Meanwhile, down in the crypts, the shadows lengthened. Maester Luwin had forbidden entry after the boy's death, but still someone had broken the seal. A servant claimed to hear singing from below. No voice, no melody, just humming. Old, cold, wrong. The next morning, the grave of Lyanna Stark was found open. Her statue had cracked down the middle. Robb ordered it sealed again. Salt and fire placed at the doors. But the silence that followed was heavier than any hammer. In the council chamber, tension spilled over. "Lord Robb," said Lord Glover, voice shaking with restraint, "with all respect, this cannot continue. The North is being mocked. Our men don't know who they serve anymore. A Stark, an Ironborn, or a ghost of the past. Speak." "Plainly," Robb said. "The Vale is here. They came for her," he said, nodding at Sansa. "Not for you, not for him." Theon stepped forward. "I'm not a usurper." "No?" Glover snapped. "Then what are you? You're not Stark. You're not Northern. You're the son of a rebel and a raider, and now you sit beside our king, whispering in his bed." Silence. Then Sansa rose. "I have no love for Theon Greyjoy," she said. "But I know what love does to people. I know what pretending does too, and I know what it means to be used as a pawn." Her eyes met Robb's. "If I stay here, I want something clear. Am I your sister, or am I your tool?" "You're my blood," Robb said, "and you're free." Sansa looked at Littlefinger, then back at Theon. "Then it's time I chose my side." That night, she burned Baelish's letters. Everyone. But he didn't flinch. He simply watched the fire, smiled, and whispered to himself, "Let the game begin." But deeper in the crypts, the fire did not warm the stone, because behind Lyanna's cracked statue, bones had shifted. A figure moved in the dark, and it remembered Theon Greyjoy's blood. The wind changed. It started as a howl, harmless, distant, like any other northern gust. But within days, it carried something sharper. The ravens flew erratically, their wings jittery. Horses refused to go near the crypt entrances. Fires flickered even when there was no breeze. And every night the people of Winterfell dreamed of bones. Theon's dreams were the worst. He saw Lyanna's statue, broken and weeping blood. He saw himself walking through the crypts, only to find stone hands reaching from the darkness, dragging him into the ground. He awoke drenched in sweat, with bruises on his arms where no one had touched him. Robb noticed. "You look like death," he said one morning, touching Theon's cheek. "I feel like I've been touched by it," Theon muttered. "There's something down there, Robb, something that doesn't want me here." Robb frowned. "The crypts have always been haunted. That's what they say." "No," Theon said, locking eyes with him. "This is different. This feels personal." That same day, Maester Luwin brought them a scroll from the citadel, ancient, sealed with black wax. He opened it carefully and read in silence, then again, and again. His face went pale. "It's about you," he said finally, looking at Theon. "Your bloodline." Theon stiffened. "What about it?" Before the Greyjoys ruled the Iron Islands, there were other kings, salt kings, sea kings, and before them, something older. "You're speaking riddles," Robb said. Lewin's hand trembled slightly. "I'm saying Theon's blood is older than any house we know, older than Stark, older than Targaryen. There are whispers of a bloodline that came not from land but from the sea." Robb raised a brow. "The deep ones?" Lewin nodded, slowly. "Legends, of course, of men who worshipped the drowned gods of the abyss, of lineages tainted by something ancient, forgotten." Theon stepped back. "You're saying I'm cursed?" "I'm saying you may be marked," Lewin said. "And if the crypts are awakening, they may not want your blood walking among them." That night, Theon stood alone before the broken statue of Lyanna Stark, now resealed but still cracked. He reached out, slowly, as if expecting something. To grab him, nothing happened, until he turned to leave. Then the whisper came, not loud, not even human. "Thief!" He spun around. The air was ice. His breath vanished. The shadows near Lyanna's tomb began to stretch, shifting like ink in water. Then a shape emerged, half bone, half shadow, tall and still. Its face flickered between wolf and woman. Its voice scraped like metal dragged across stone. "You do not belong. You wear a name not yours. You wear love not meant for you." Theon backed away. "I've earned my place here," he said, his voice shaking. "You were stolen, and you shall be returned." Then the shadow vanished, snuffed out like a candle. The next morning, Theon didn't speak of it, but he went to Sansa. "I need to know something," he said, "about the night your father died, about your mother, about what she knew." Sansa looked confused. "She hated you, I know, but maybe she hated what I am, not who." They searched through the old records, Catelyn's letters, her journals, and in a locked box beneath her bed, they found a torn page written in her hand. "He looks too much like the old blood. His eyes, they are not Greyjoy. He hears things in the walls. Ned says he's just dreaming, but I've seen the way the weirwood watches him. There is something wrong with that boy." Robb read it in silence, then set it down slowly. "The Godswood," he said. "That's where it started." That night, the three of them, Robb, Sansa, Theon, walked to the weirwood in the dark. The heart tree loomed, red sap dripping like blood from its carved eyes. Its mouth seemed wider, its face crueler. Sansa shivered. "It's watching us." Theon stepped forward. "Then let it watch." He placed his hand on the bark, and something ancient screamed, not in sound, in feeling, in the bones, in the blood. The ground beneath them shuddered, the sky cracked with lightning, and from the crypts below, a second scream answered, louder, closer, awake. Theon collapsed, eyes rolling back, and in that moment he saw it all, an ancient throne beneath the sea. A woman drowned in black water, her child pulled from her arms by a man in a wolf's cloak, a pact broken, a bloodline scattered, and a promise: when the wolf loves the sea, the dead shall rise. The snows fell harder now. Winter had fully come, not just in name, but in spirit. The land itself felt older. The trees groaned in the wind. The ravens flew silent and Winterfell whispered. Theon hadn't woken. For 2 days he lay in a cold sweat, trembling, eyes fluttering beneath their lids, as if watching something no one else could see. Sansa never left his side. Robb did, but only to prepare the defenses, because the dead were stirring. They came not as wights from the far north, not White Walkers, not ice demons. These were older. They were kings, lords, forgotten Stark blood. Dead men rising from the crypts, pulled up by a curse buried deep in Winterfell's stone foundation. Bones dressed in rotting furs, teeth clacking in jaws made for silence. Eyes missing, but they saw. Maester Lewin had no answers. only stories. Of a time before the first men, of creatures that ruled with no names. Of a pact forged in blood, binding the old kings of the north to keep a promise unbroken, that the line of the sea and the line of the wolf would never mix. But Robb had broken it. By loving Theon, by claiming him, by marrying him. And now the cost had come due. In the courtyard men screamed as skeletal hands reached from the ground. Swords did little, fire less. The north was eating itself. Robb stood with Grey Wind at his side, watching from the walls as Winterfell crumbled from within. Then Theon awoke. His scream cracked through stone. He stood, eyes wild, sweat on his skin, breath shallow. "They're not just dead," he said. "They're bound, to me, to this blood, to a promise that was broken before I was even born." Sansa stepped back. "What are you saying?" "My mother wasn't a Greyjoy," he whispered. "Not truly. She came from something deeper. She was chosen, taken. She carried the blood of the Sea Kings, and I was never meant to live on land." Sansa looked horrified. Robb just stepped closer. "Then how do we stop them?" Theon turned to the godswood. "The tree. Of course, the heart tree was the witness, the anchor, the voice of the pact. It had watched as Theon grew, as Robb loved, as the curse reawakened. "If we burn it," Theon said, "we sever the pact. We unbind the curse." "But the godswood is sacred," Sansa said. "So is the north," Robb growled. "And it's dying." They made their way through blood and bone, through screams and ash. The castle burned behind them, but ahead the godswood stood still, untouched, as if waiting. Robb carried the torch. Theon knelt at the base of the tree. "Speak to it," Robb said. "I already have." The tree's red eyes bled as Theon whispered something no one else understood, words in a language drowned under centuries of salt and shadow. Then he looked at Robb. "You have to do it." Robb hesitated. "No. If I do it, it will. Bind the curse again. You have to break it. With love, with fire." Sansa placed a hand on Robb's shoulder. "He's right." Robb stepped forward. He kissed Theon, once, fiercely, without shame, without fear. Then he touched the flame. To the roots, the tree screamed. The forest echoed, and across Winterfell the dead howled, then dropped. One by one they collapsed into dust, bones crumbling. The storm broke, the wind died. Silence returned. Theon collapsed, coughing, weak but alive. The tree was gone, burned to ash. In the morning, Winterfell still stood, broken, scarred, but alive. The lords who survived bent the knee once more, not out of love, not out of loyalty, but because they saw the truth now. Robb Stark had walked through death and come back with a king by his side. Theon never fully recovered. The curse had touched him too deeply, but he lived. Sansa left for the Vale soon after, wearing armor instead of silk, carrying her own banner now. And Robb? He ruled, with Theon beside him, not as a consort, not as a symbol, but as a reminder. That love, when defiant enough, can shake the bones of the dead, and that some thrones are not inherited. They're earned with fire, blood, and the weight of a crown that was never meant to fit.